A mezi tím bych se ale zeptala ještě Nicka. Bavíme se o tom, kde přišla ta myšlenka manželství pro všechny. Vy jste poslanec za Konzervativní stranu. Lze předpokládat, že když tu myšlenku přinesete do konzervativního prostředí, tak se asi nesetká s jásotem a s výroky typu, na to jsme tady čekali, přesně to teďka tady potřebujeme. Jaké byly ty debaty na začátku uvnitř vaší strany?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to join you at this very important conference. It's a pleasure to be here. I was elected to the UK Parliament 15 years ago, and in the year that I was elected, a new leader of the Conservative Party, of which I'm a member, was also elected, David Cameron, and he was determined to modernise our party and to ensure that it was relevant and in touch with contemporary concerns on a whole host of issues, including environmental policy. But one of them related to the issue of LGBT rights. David Cameron, when he was elected Prime Minister in 2010, 5 years later, gave a very famous speech to our party conference, not to his members of Parliament, but to party activists who had travelled from across the whole country to our conference. And he told them that he wanted to introduce equal marriage legislation. And he also told them that he wanted to do this not in spite of being a Conservative, but because he was a Conservative. And in doing so, he located the arguments for same-sex marriage as Conservative arguments that Conservatives could embrace. Yes, he said, of course it is about equality, but it's also about something else. It's about the institution of marriage, an institution that we should give religious institutions to decide on what happens in their own churches. So our legislation never compelled churches to do what they did not wish to do. Our equal marriage legislation applies to civil marriages only, and if churches and church institutions wish to embrace equal marriage, as some denominations now have, they are free to do so, but equally they are free to disagree. That is the nature of religious freedom. On top of those arguments, you can, of course, add economic arguments that in modern societies, younger people in particular want to live and work in an environment where they are free to choose to be themselves, and those countries, those cities that embrace these values will attract the brightest and the best. This is an argument that is made powerfully by the former Mayor of New York, Mayor Bloomberg. It is not an abstract argument, it is a very real economic one, because there are other countries around the world where people choose not to live and work precisely because their rights are not recognised. Our legislation was passed in 2013 by big majorities in our elected House of Commons and in our unelected upper House of Lords. And a year later, people were able to enter into same-sex marriages for the first time. Since then, round about 10,000 people a year have been entering into same-sex marriages. That's 4% of the total. So what harm has been done by that? No harm whatsoever. Did it change the institution of marriage? No, of course not. I gave a speech in the House of Commons, and I said, can we really take seriously this argument that somehow the institution of marriage has changed just because two people of the same sex want to join it? What are we to expect? That one day in the morning, a heterosexual couple will wake up and the husband will turn to the wife and say, darling, our marriage is over. Elton John has got married to David Furnish. Is that really a serious argument? Of course not. It doesn't affect their marriage at all. In the course of 15 years, I have, as a legislator, voted for laws, most of which are resented by many of my constituents. We raise taxes, we restrict freedom, we do things which our constituents don't want. This law had one effect, and one effect only, and it was to make people happy. You don't often do that as a legislator. It caused enormous joy. It caused 10,000 weddings, the best weddings a year, to happen. What harm was done by that? So I believe that these arguments are popular. 75% of the population in the United Kingdom now support same-sex marriage. No member of Parliament will admit that they voted against it. Some members of Parliament have had the courage to apologise, but you will not find members of Parliament in the UK standing up and admitting that they voted against it, because they know that that would be an unpopular thing to do. 1 year after the legislation was passed, David Cameron, the Conservative Prime Minister, won an election and increased his majority. There was no electoral harm to him, it only did him electoral good. One by one, the arguments against doing this fall away. Let me say this in conclusion. I first came to this beautiful city 20 years ago with my partner. It was the first holiday that we took together. It made an extraordinary impression on us. I've left him at home. But I would like to come back as soon as possible with my partner, and the thing I would most like to do is to be able to celebrate with you the introduction of same-sex marriage in your country, and to see the happiness that it will bring to your people.